I'd like to tell you about the most foolish thing that I've ever done. Years ago, I was a scoutmaster, and we used to take our scouts out on Wednesday nights for activities in the evenings. We didn't like staying in the building, just thought we'd go out and have fun in the out of doors. It was in September, and it was starting to get a little cool, and not really cold, but cool enough to not worry about snakes and things like that out in the desert. So outside of Mountain Home, there's a couple of craters that are rather large, rather deep. They're probably about a half mile across and about 300 feet deep, and they're pretty interesting. So I thought I'd take this little group of boys, there must have been about 7 or 8 of them, and go to see these craters. And it was in the evening, and the sun was starting to set, and we pulled up to the crater, and we stepped out of the van, and first thing I noticed, underneath the van, there was a little rattlesnake coiled up there. And the boys were kind of excited, and I said, "Oh, leave it alone, it'll be fine." So they did, and we hiked around the rim of this crater. And as we got to one edge of it, there's a cliff, kind of an escarpment there. And some of the boys climbed down that cliff, and they were exploring and chasing after rabbits and throwing rocks at rabbits and things like that. And then all of a sudden I heard all this commotion. And I looked down there about 30 feet below me, and a couple of boys had found a rattlesnake laying on a rock. And that rattlesnake was probably about as thick as my forearm. It was a big rattler. And they were throwing rocks at it. And I said, "Leave it alone. Just leave it alone." But being boys, they kept throwing rocks at it. And the next thing I know, this rattler lit up. Suddenly, when it did that, the entire side of the cliff lit up. We were completely surrounded by rattlesnakes. Unbeknown to me, we had walked into the middle of a migration of rattlesnakes. It was beginning fall, and they were migrating back to their den, and we didn't know it, but we had walked right into the middle of all of these snakes, and they were everywhere. We started noticing all around us there were snakes, and I thought, "Oh my word, what am I going to do? These boys, we're going to get killed out here." I said, "Well, we'll walk back along the edge of the rim back to the van," and I yelled out to the boys below. I said, "Make your way out of the crater and come back and meet us at the van." And so they proceeded out, and all these boys were wearing shorts and tennis shoes. There was no protection. As we made our way around the edge of the rim, by then the sun had set, and everything was the same color. It was a brown grass, and the sky was kind of the same color. You couldn't distinguish things very clearly, but all around us, as we walked carefully, we heard little snakes jumping out and striking all around us. We finally made it back to the van, and as I looked down with my binoculars down into the bottom of this crater, I could see the 2 boys that were down there. One had a flashlight, and the other one had a great big rock held up above his head as they were kind of creeping through this knee-high grass down there. And I thought, "Oh my word, how am I going to explain this to his parents, how they got killed?" And I was the only adult there. And so they finally made it back out of the crater into the van, and as I got into the van, by then it was dark, and we drove off. I thought to myself, this is the most foolish thing that I've ever done.